In this lesson, we're going to look at the overview of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a very important process that occurs in our cells, and this process, it does involve about 30 steps. So there's many steps that we could look at. First, we want to look at the overall process, the overall goals of it, and then later we can look at the individual stages and talk about the details. As far as an overview of this process, it is going to be a catabolic process. And as a catabolic process, this is going to be breaking molecules and it will be releasing energy from them. So besides calling it catabolic, we can also call it exergonic, and that would imply that energy is coming out of this reaction. And the reason for that is that our cells have all different types of work that needs to be performed, and we've got to provide for those energy needs. So cellular respiration is the main way that our cells are going to do that. This process is going to break specifically food molecules. And so we'll take those food molecules, we'll break them up very, very carefully, so in many steps, and release energy from them. And then that energy that's released, as we mentioned already, it's going to be used to run a lot of different reactions inside the cell. It will be used to power the reactions that have those energy needs. Now, if we talk a little bit more about the food molecules involved in this. A lot of times when you see that overall equation for cellular respiration, we see it starting out with glucose. So if I write that equation here, here's my glucose molecule. So it is certainly a food that we can consume. We're going to take that, we're going to take some oxygen as well, and then in many, many steps, we are going to convert that into carbon dioxide. We'll have some water, and then we'll also have the energy, which is the overall product that we're interested in here. Now, this glucose molecule, it is an example starting point. We do not have to start with glucose. If you just think about all the food that you eat on an everyday basis, you could eat glucose, which is an example of a carbohydrate. You could also consume fat molecules. You could consume proteins. We could consume triglycerides. So there's a variety of different molecules that we could start with. This is just an example. The reason we're using this one, or the reason why we can use all those other ones, is that they are organic molecules. So organic molecules are molecules that are going to have carbon and hydrogen, and that's really what we're looking for here as a starting point. These are going to be very energy-rich molecules. They have a lot of energy kind of tied up in high-energy, valuable electrons, and that's what we're going to be harvesting throughout the many stages of this reaction. So we're going to start with these. They contain high energy electrons is what I'm going to call them. And this is just my shorthand for that. So high energy electrons, we will be harvesting those in many, many steps. And those electrons are going to be way up here. So the overall idea is that we're going to take these electrons that have this much energy, we're going to drain the energy out in many, many steps, and then we will collect the electrons at the end using another molecule. The molecule that does the collecting is the oxygen that we see here. So this one will collect the drained electrons. And at that point, we're just trying to get rid of them. So electrons, that's my shorthand for it there. So at that point, we're done with the electrons, and oxygen, that's the oxygen that we inhale. It's going to grab those electrons, and it will then turn into water. But we will have collected this valuable part over here. That's what we're really interested in, and then we can use that. Most of the time, we're going to be taking that energy, and we're going to be making some ATP with it. And ATP is a really good energy currency for various reactions inside the cell. So that's the overall process. We do divide this process of cellular respiration into 3 smaller stages. So now I want to introduce those stages, where they're happening at inside the cell, and just the overall kind of goals of those stages. Okay, so if we're talking about cellular respiration, again, 3 stages. This is going to be a cell that we're looking at on this slide. This cell, of course, would have lots of components inside of it, and I'm not drawing all of those components in here, but in this process, we're going to start off in the cytoplasm. So my cytoplasm is going to be out here. Later on, we're going to move into the mitochondria, and I'm drawing it much, much larger, obviously, than it would actually be, but this would be my mitochondria down here. So mitochondria, which does have a couple different compartments inside of it. Okay, so the first part of cellular respiration is going to take place out here in the cytoplasm. This is going to be called glycolysis. That glycolysis process is going to get the ball rolling. So this is going to begin the breakdown of the sugar molecule, of the glucose, of the organic molecules. It starts out there in the cytoplasm, and then after we break it down partially, we're going to be moving into the matrix of the mitochondria, which is in here. And that's where we'll see the citric acid cycle take place. Between those two processes, their job is to collect those electrons. So they're both collecting electrons. They are high energy electrons. They're way up here at the top of an energy scale. So lots of potential energy in them. And so they collect the electrons. They pass those to other molecules that temporarily hang on to them. And then when we get to stage 3 is going to happen right here on this membrane, the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And stage 3 is going to be extracting the energy from those. So stage 3, I'm going to just move down here and write the name, but it would be occurring on that membrane. This one is oxidative phosphorylation. And oxidative phosphorylation, that is the one where we take those electrons, drain the energy out. So I'll just write that here. We're going to slowly release the energy from the electrons. And that's half of it. So we slowly release the energy, and then at the same time we're grabbing that energy, and we will turn around and use that energy to make some ATP. So this one really, it is the most productive of all of the phases because that's the one where the vast amount of energy gets released. But the other two play crucial roles. They are doing the collecting of those initial electrons that we're going to get the energy from. So 3 different stages to cellular respiration. Everyone plays an important part. They all have different locations where they are taking place. First 2 stages are going to be collecting the high energy electrons from that organic molecule that we start with. And between the first 2 stages, it's about 20 steps. And then when we get to the 3rd stage, the oxidative phosphorylation, this is going to occur right there on the mitochondrial inner membrane. The molecules will actually be embedded in that membrane, and those are going to extract the energy from the electrons and then use that energy to make some ATP.